very first question I got to ask him, what's the next step for JJ McCarthy?
Yeah.
And I mean, he took that and ran with it, talking about comparisons to Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, that was a little.
I think I understand what he meant when he said, look at these guys and how they interact with their teammates.
Yeah.
And how their teammates react to them.
Yeah.
And that's how it is with JJ McCarthy. So I don't know that he was necessarily saying that JJ McCarthy was going to be better than those two NFL quarterbacks, but he likes the proper attitude and interaction in his team. And he sees that in the leadership of JJ McCarthy. There's no question about it.
Yeah, you nailed that perfectly. And the timing of this, there was this series called The Quarterback, and I got it off Netflix. And I was it featured Kirk Cousins, Patrick Mahomes, and Marcus Mariota, and behind the scenes. And so Marcus Mariota, they followed him going all the way to the Super Bowl. And I watched this after that comment that you brought out of Harbaugh about comparing him to Patrick Mahomes. And it wasn't just, I mean, on the field, you see some stuff that JJ does that could evolve into Patrick Mahomes level, if you know what I mean. He does so many of the similar things, obviously not with the experience and refined talent, but it's there. But it's the locker room stuff like you're talking about. He's got to be the most engaging Michigan quarterback I can remember like ever, and in a leadership role. And this team's got a ton of leaders. Oh my God. As Harbaugh talked about, there could have been 30 guys that played that 3 rep of the 3 reps that were there. And Mikey Sainristil, Blake Corum, and Chris Jenkins. I mean, there's 27 others plus could have done that role, including JJ McCarthy. And that's a great comparison. But we'll see how that plays out. But he checks a lot of the Patrick Mahomes boxes.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And by extension, some Tom Brady boxes. You ask Brady's former teammates about him, and they absolutely loved him. They loved how he interacted. They loved how he brought people together, fired people up, and JJ McCarthy is well aware of where Tom Brady played his football. It was interesting. They set up a photo that JJ McCarthy's mom took. It was Jim Harbaugh shaking hands with JJ McCarthy. And it was, like I said, it was right outside his office. And on the wall behind them was a very similar pose with Tom Brady and Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah.
When he was in one time. So, I mean, it was just like, okay, that's the perfect setup there. He's a kid that has all kinds of confidence, all kinds of poise. And I loved his reaction when it was tossed to him. Okay, Jim Harbaugh mentioned you in the same sentences as those two guys, Mahomes and Josh Allen. And basically, JJ's response was, look, I emulate those guys.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to surpass them. I'm trying to outdo them.
That's pretty ambitious.
I think that, like I said, Jim Harbaugh intended it, talking about a locker room type of thing. JJ McCarthy, it is a measure of his confidence, a measure of his swagger, that he hears that and doesn't wave it off and say, oh, no, those guys, I'll never be those guys. And he says, look, I'm trying to be better than they are.
Well, part of being better than they are eventually will be decision making. I mean, JJ, since his freshman year, swashbuckler, he's not afraid of making a mistake. And then we're looking at the TCU a clip right there. I mean, the TCU game, he made a couple of bad decisions that cost them the game. Now he was terrific in the second half, but I think that in that maturation process for JJ McCarthy, what I'm going to be looking for this year are not ill-advised, mistakes out there. I mean, he's got to clean that stuff up. That's going to cost his team. And Sometimes you can have to eat the football. Sometimes you can have to run out of bounds and not just try to make a play all the time. And so I think that will come in. I think we will see that. I would expect that this year.
Yeah, and I was doing an interview earlier today and said very much the same thing. The questioner asked what does Michigan have to do to play at a championship level, and I simply said it's correct the major errors that were made in that TCU game. You can't have those, and that counts for the offensive side, the pick sixes. It goes on the defensive side, which you've talked at length about, the mistakes they made there, the overcommitments and the big plays that they gave up. That's where, you really start with your preparation for this season. How can we, when we get to the very best teams, how can we avoid those sorts of things that dug a hole just big enough that despite a furious comeback by Michigan, they couldn't overcome?
Yeah. And so it's you're reeling JJ in, making good decisions and we won't know about how that litmus test of that until he gets into these big games. And these big games, unfortunately, are going to take a while to become big games. Hope they're not big games the first five, or first four rather. But that fifth game at Nebraska, he might have to make plays. You
Yep.
just never know. And obviously at Michigan State, now that game's moved at night, that could be a test. Naysayers will say, hey, Michigan's schedule, they don't play anybody till November 11th. So we won't even know how good they are till November 11th. And cynics will say that. And, I sometimes say that. But I think they're going to be tested before that. And I hope they are tested because that's what's going to make you a better football player in J.J. McCarthy, ultimately a better football team for the Michigan Wolverines.
Yeah, you play a road game in the Big Ten. Don't even.
Yeah, Minnesota's another one. This isn't, Swiss cheese kind of challenge.
Right.
Yeah, granted, those are not top caliber teams as we look at right now, but those environments are gonna present challenges that Michigan needs to endure.
Absolutely.